Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today, apart from the fact that I look like crap because I've not put any makeup on and it is Saturday morning, well, midday, but that's morning for me, I am here to introduce to you the 3 books that I'm going to be reading for my I Read 3 thrillers, which is one of the 2 that I'm going to be doing this month for October, because it's spooky month, so I'm going to be reading 3 thrillers and 3 horror books, but this video is me vlogging about the 3 thrillers. So the first one I'm reading is The Night Swim by Megan Goldin, and I've already started a little bit, so I'll be talking about that very soon. But basically, this is a thriller, obviously, where we follow this woman, Rachel Kroll, who is a very famous and very successful podcast host, and her podcast is called Guilty or Not Guilty, and it's basically about murder. Well, it's not just about murder, but it's about crime. So it's like a true crime podcast. She goes to this town, Neapolis, to cover the trial, the live trial of this guy who raped a girl in the town. And the trial is happening pretty much live as she goes there. So basically it's the first time that she does something like that, and that it isn't, a crime that was done years ago that she's just reinvestigating. This is more of a, hey, let's put the listeners into the jury box, pretty much, and see what they think as the live trial goes on. So as she goes there, she receives a note from a woman who claims that she's been contacting her saying that she needs help with the case of her sister who was murdered years and years ago when she was little. And she basically stalks Rachel and leaves a note on like her car windshield and stuff like that. So Rachel kind of freaks out, but is also very intrigued by the story that the woman is telling her. So she decides to maybe look into it and just kind of check what's going on. So that's all that's happened so far, but so far I'm really enjoying it, and that's the first book that I'm reading. The next 2 books I'm going to be reading, I'm not sure which order in which I'm going to go through them yet, but I'm going to be reading One by One by Ruth Ware, which is a book club pick as well for Kayla's book club. So Kayla from Books and Lala has a book club called the Literally Dead book club, and they usually just pick thrillers and horror books, mostly thrillers and mysteries. So this one is one of them. I haven't read Ruth Ware yet. I do own The Turn of the Key and I plan on reading it, but this is the only other Ruth Ware that I own. I haven't seen a lot of good reviews unfortunately recently, but I am very curious and I do want to get to it. It's been compared to And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie, which I've literally just finished reading last month, so I'm quite excited to get to this one as well. And then the last book that I'm the most excited for, like, I can't even begin to explain why, because this tells the story of a bunch of 80-year-olds who have this club called the Thursday Murder Club, where they are passionate about true crime, so a little bit like The Night Swim. But one day a dead body turns up on their doorstep and they become much more involved in a murder than they would actually fancy themselves to be. So that's all I know about this book, which is a sentence I've realized I say a lot. That's all I know about this book. But it's true, that's all I know about this book, and it's really, really recent. It came out super recently. I love the cover, and I don't know, like, I'm just very excited for this one. It's Sunday midday. We went to my boyfriend's parents last night to celebrate his birthday a little bit in advance, so I managed to read quite a little bit in the evening and on the train, but haven't really read anything in between, so I haven't spent too much time on this book, but it reads very fast so far. I'm 147 pages into The Night Swim, and that's like a little bit before midway, if you can see. I'm enjoying it so far. There's a couple of passages that I felt were a little bit slow, like the beginning I thought was a little bit slow to pick up. There's a couple of scenes that kind of just repeat themselves and I was a little bit bored at first, but now it's starting to pick up a little bit more the pace and I'm getting more and more invested in the two cases that are happening simultaneously in the book. So in the book, Rachel Kroll is this woman who's the host of the podcast, as I've said before, and she's getting these letters from this woman Hannah, who's talking about how her sister Jenny died years ago when Hannah was only 10, and I think Jenny was just like a teenager, so like maybe 16 or something, I can't remember. As we progress within the letters, it sounds more and more like people just dismiss it as an accidental drowning because she went swimming at night somewhere and just hit her head on some rocks. But a lot of people are also like, there's no rocks there, you can't hit your head, and she was a really good swimmer, so it makes no sense. So Rachel, I think, is going to start thinking, yeah, there must be something there, and the locals just don't want to say it. It sounds like the case is very similar and shares a lot of, you know, common factors with the one that's currently happening, that she's live streaming almost. So she's going into court to see how this case is evolving, and this case is about this young girl who claims that she was raped by this guy, and the guy in question was a future Olympic swimmer, like he was practicing all the time, he was a local celebrity, etc. So it's a very sensitive case because a lot of people are, you know, thinking, oh, she's just trying to ruin his reputation. Obviously, even if he's proven innocent, it's been tainted forever, he's never gonna be an Olympic swimmer anymore, etc. His future is ruined, blah blah blah. And on the other hand, other people are like, well, you know, it's not because he's a celebrity that you have to dismiss the fact that this girl probably would be saying it because it's true, because she did get raped. So the whole thing is kind of like hard to read sometimes, but also it's being written from the point of view of Rachel, and I think I like her character just because she keeps quite open-minded about believing almost both sides. Like, she's not really taking any sides so far. It does sound like she's more like women should be believed and they shouldn't have to be scared to walk at night alone, blah blah blah, which totally agree. But she's also like listening and not just immediately emitting judgment about is he guilty or not, because her whole podcast is called Guilty or Not Guilty, so I guess she's there to try and be as fair as possible and open-minded as possible. I really feel like the way it's written makes you actually put you, like the podcast says, the podcast always ends up with this one sentence that's like, this is Rachel Kroll from Guilty or Not Guilty, the podcast that puts you in the jury box. And I do feel like I am being put in the jury box in the book, just the way it's written. I don't feel like it's going to have loads of twists and stuff. You can kind of expect what's going to happen, you know what's going to happen, but it's well written in a way that you're waiting to get the information drip by drip, almost like you're, for both cases, for the Jenny Stills one, you know, Hannah's sister, the one that happened years ago, and for the current one that's happening now, the live trial. So for both cases, you feel like you're in the jury box and you're getting this information one info at a time and trying to make up your mind about like what happened, do I believe this person or that person, and it's very interesting. I think that's everything I've got to say so far about the book. And I'm excited to discover what's going to happen next, so I will let you guys know as I read on. The night swim last night and I'm just gonna tell you my thoughts about it. I genuinely enjoyed it so much and I rated it 4 stars. The twists weren't that surprising and I kind of expected a lot of the stuff that we discovered towards the end, so that's why I couldn't really give it 5 stars, because I feel like if that had been an incredible twist that I just hadn't seen coming, then I would have given this book 5. But I think 4 stars is a pretty good rating, and I'm pretty happy with this book and this reading. I do think one thing that bothered me a little bit in the book is that a lot of the time the author talks about women and men as if only women get raped and only men rape. And it's, you know, I understand that for a lot of people that is the majority of the cases, but I'd rather use more of the term maybe victim and perpetrator or something like that, just because you can definitely have women who rape men, and these cases do exist, and I feel like without acknowledging them, it's making the situation even worse, because that's already a huge problem, is the fact that those cases are very rarely acknowledged, because most of the time people are like, oh, he should consider himself lucky, or he you know, scored or lucked out or whatever, instead of agreeing that, hey, maybe guys can also be sexually assaulted, attacked and raped. One thing that the book did really well, and I said earlier though, was the fact that it really does put you in the jury box, as the podcast claims, just because you kind of go through all the twists and turns of the story. Not that there were any surprising twists, and the ending was not surprising to me. The revelations, all of that, I kind of had guessed at least 3 moves before, sometimes just 1 move before, what was going to happen, who the person was going to be who did this, or who the person was going to be who was linked to that, blah blah blah. But you still follow the cases, both of them, you know, drip by drip, just getting the bit of information that you're getting one at a time, and you don't know exactly what the whole story is going to be like, what it's going to unfold like. And I did enjoy discovering that. I've also read this book super freaking fast, because literally it took me just the weekend, and for me that's quite a feat, so I'm very happy with the pace of it. I thought originally it was a little bit slow, but it does pick up quite quickly. Like after 100 pages or so, you start really getting into the depth of things, and you just can't put it back down. At least I couldn't, so that was pretty cool. And I think it's Kayla from Books and Lala who said this, but I totally agree with her, that this really feels like it's the first book in what could be a series, and that you want to know more about the main character. And there's like a little hint towards the end about her producer who's like, hey, I've got a great idea for season 4 of your podcast. And you're like, oh, I hope this is going to be another book. And there's a couple of hints at more stories that could be developed, and more, you know, characters who have maybe other cases on the go and things like that, where you're like, oh, that would be great if that was covered in the next book, so you want to have a next book, which is pretty freaking cool. I'm very hopeful, because this book seems to have so much success and so many people have been talking about it, so I'm very hopeful that it's gonna get a second book, hopefully. I have started One by One by Ruth Ware. I've only read like 20 pages, so it's really nothing, but I already have thoughts, so I thought I might as well just get them out there, and then maybe make, you know, shorter segments of videos and just check back on you whenever I've read a bit more if I have more thoughts. The story, which I didn't even know what the story was, because all I knew was like, it's a thriller, it's written by Ruth Ware, and I own another book by her that I still haven't read, and it's for a book club pick, and other people have said that it was a little bit like Agatha Christie, and then they went on, which I've just read. But basically this is about a bunch of people who go to a ski resort, and they're like on a corporate retreat, I guess, whatever that's called, because they're all part of this corporation slash cool, edgy, techie company called Snoop that makes an app that's like really famous and lots of people love it, and it's like the new Instagram or whatever. And they decide to go on this retreat in a very luxurious fancy chalet somewhere in France, and I think there's something to do with their business being maybe bought or merged or whatever, so it's got to do with a buyout, which I am not a finance person and I don't fucking understand anything about that, so I'm not going to pretend like I know what's happening. So they're there for that reason, and it could make them millionaires from what I understand, so there's like money stuff going on, and then someone starts killing them from what I gather, so murder happens. You start the book with the introduction of the people who work at the company. So like you would have on their website in the about page, here's the co-founder, blah blah, and then, you know, his Twitter handle or whatever, what he's listening to right now. And you have that about 6 or 7 characters, I can't remember. And then you also have the first very, you know, prologue chapter, which is a newspaper clipping explaining that 4 people, 4 Britons have died in a chalet after 6 others have died in an avalanche, like nearby, something like that. So far I have 3 thoughts. 1, it feels extremely similar to Lucy Foley's The Hunting Party, which I adored. I know a lot of people didn't like it that much, but I really, really, really loved it. And I'm not sure how I feel about a book that's pretty much got the exact same plot. Bunch of people go to a chalet, are cut off because of an avalanche or a storm or whatever. It's happening, you know, in the snow somewhere. They're all rich assholes. No one is very likable. Someone dies, maybe more than one person dies, and you get the point of view of some of the guests plus the hosts. That's exactly what happens in The Hunting Party, at, you know, in the grand lines. And yeah, I don't know how I feel about reading another book that's pretty much got the exact same plot, but we'll see. That's just the very beginning, and it might be completely different as I read on. 2, reading their little introductory paragraphs about each character. I can already tell you I hate everyone. I hope that the hosts are going to be likable, because you have the point of view of one of the hosts in the chalet. And in The Hunting Party, that was exactly how I felt. The guests were so dislikable and awful, but the hosts in the chalet were my favourites and the ones I was rooting for. And I hope that's going to be the same, if it's going to follow the same, you know, pattern as the Lucy Foley book. And then 3, this app idea is fucking dumb. Like, I might be wrong, and if someone works in, you know, app development, maybe they're going to tell me off and say, no, you're wrong. But honestly, it's called Snoop, and the idea behind the app is that you can listen in at the exact same time as the person who's listening to their Spotify. You connect it to their Spotify. So you can be a nobody but have really, really good taste, and it's basically like a DJing thing, and loads of people might follow you, and you have tons of followers who just want to know what you're listening to right now to discover new things or whatever. More like a DJ. Or you might be a celebrity yourself, like a Beyonce or Rihanna or whatever, and you're putting on your Snoop app so people can be like, oh my god, it's like I'm listening at the exact same time as she is to this exact same song, and we're listening together. It's like we're sharing headphones. Spotify already does this. Well, at the very least with friends, you can definitely see what they're listening to live and actually see when the songs change, and when they're not listening to anything anymore, it just says was last online or was last listening to something 3 hours ago or whatever. So it already exists, and I'm pretty sure there's loads of ways to just share what you're listening to. If you want to like make it public, if you're Beyonce, you can just put a fucking tweet on and say listening to this right now, and that's it. I don't know, I don't see how an app like that would make millions and actually be the new Instagram. And I don't know why it upset me that much, because it really doesn't fucking matter. It's like a murder mystery. It's gonna be about murder, not about apps. But I'm just annoyed that the app idea is so dumb. That's all I gotta say. Okay, so I've now reached page 106 in One by One by Ruth Ware. And I gotta say, I'm reading it pretty fast, and I'm really enjoying the writing style, and I want to know more. I want to know what happens to the characters, definitely. So it's got me where it wants to have me. But it feels so eerily similar to The Hunting Party, and I just don't think it compares. It feels like there's a lot of similarities, but that I read The Hunting Party first, and I loved it first, and I can't feel like this one is as good if they're gonna be so similar. I don't know how else to explain that, but yeah. The character of Erin feels hyper similar to me in the feeling of it, because it's been a while since I've read The Hunting Party, but she feels very, very similar to the character of the hostess that we followed in The Hunting Party. Same job description, same kind of role, same... I have lots of thoughts about these asshole guests, but I have to shut up and smile because I have to be the perfect host and it's my job. but also has somehow like a deep dark secret from the past. And that's exactly what happened in The Hunting Party. It was the same character, really, the exact same girl. The other character, Liz, the girl who used to work for Snoop and doesn't anymore, she's that type of character who's very timid and shy and just doesn't feel like she's good enough to hang out with them, and they're all so rich and like wealthy and they spend so much money on fancy clothes, and she never feels like she belongs there, and she's always wearing her H&M clothes, which personally I found there's nothing wrong with H&M, but basically it's that kind of character who's always like, oh, I don't dare to stand up to them for myself and to say no when I don't want to do something, and I'm constantly feeling bullied by them or invisible, and I don't know, there's something about that type of character. That is exactly one of the characters that we had in The Hunting Party. There's also a girl who exactly has these same vibes to her. So I'm sorry that this is becoming a comparison between the two books, because this wasn't the plan. This is just meant to be me reading 3 thrillers, and I kind of just feel like I would be enjoying this book so much more had I not read The Hunting Party first. Okay, I've now finished One by One by Ruth Ware. Really did enjoy myself reading it. As in, the journey itself I thought was pretty good, pretty fun. I obviously wouldn't have been able to read it that fast, I think, if I wasn't enjoying myself at all. And that has to count for something. But I gotta say, my overall feeling after this book was that it was okay. It was like not extraordinary. It didn't make me think, oh, this one is gonna stay with me for a while. It just made me think, The Hunting Party was better. Yeah, it's a 3 stars for me, and I think part of the reason why is, one, it was really, 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 really easy to guess who the villain was, like who the killer was, and I guessed it pretty early on, and I don't mind when I feel like I'm being led to guess who it is, or, you know, it's almost like sometimes when you read a thriller, a little bit like in The Night Swim. I felt like in The Night Swim, I was reading on feeling like I was given hints that would lead me to know who it was, and then I would guess, and there would be the satisfaction of I was right and I guessed it, and it's, you know, because you left me those hints and those crumbs and I followed them. There's almost like a mini detective work on the part of the reader in those types of books, and it's really enjoyable, I find personally. Some people are like, oh, if I guess then I don't like it, but I personally feel like if you have the satisfaction of being right and feeling like it's not too early on that you guessed it, but just at some point you're like, ooh, I know what's gonna happen, and then you're right, it can be really fun. But this one, it was just too early on, and it didn't particularly feel like we were meant to guess this early on. It just didn't feel like it was because of hints being left for the reader on purpose. If anything, I would say the way that it was written, many times I thought, oh, she's trying to throw me off, so I don't think this is the killer. But I have a really, you know, big hunch that it is the killer, and it's reinforced by the fact that I feel like the way this is written is to avoid me thinking it's the killer. I don't know how else to explain without giving massive spoilers, so this is my convoluted way of explaining to you why I thought it was an easy guess. Apart from that, I did still enjoy myself. I don't regret reading this book, and I still had fun, but it remains like a meh 3 star for me. And the next book that I'm going to be reading for this, I'm so freaking excited to be reading The Thursday Murder Club now by Richard Osman. Is it possible to love a book that you've only read 7 pages of? Because this is already the case. I've only read 1 chapter, which is literally up to page 7 of The Thursday Murder Club. By the way, look at this. How cute is that? I love this. Yeah, I've only read 7 pages and I'm already loving the writing style and just so intrigued, and I just got this little butterfly in my stomach when I'm like, this is gonna be so good. I'm predicting this to be a 5-star read, and I really, really hope I'm right. It's Sunday afternoon. I may have a glass, perhaps because I had a bottle open yesterday and decided that it would be a waste to let the bubbles all go flat. So yeah, finishing it today. I'm really enjoying it so far. I'm only page 71, so 20 chapters in, so not very far. Here, that's about how much I've read. So far, just really enjoy the way it's written, because you have the point of view of mainly Joyce, who's writing in her diary, and she's one of the gang of 70, 80-year-old somethings who all live together in this little retirement village, a luxury retirement village somewhere in England. She writes in her diary to say that she was very much invited to participate in this Thursday murder club with 3 other people, which is Elizabeth, Ron and Ibrahim, who are all in this retirement village and fascinated by solving cold cases. It seems that I started with another person in their group, I can't remember her name, but she used to be a cop as well or something, and she's retired, and so she launched this by having stolen some of her old cold cases, and they started chatting about it, and that's how the group started. But now in this little group, a real murder has happened, because some guy, Tony Curran, just died, and he was involved in the construction business surrounding all those luxury retirement homes. So he's part of the business, but clearly we've had sometimes his third person point of view, and we learned that he's not exactly a super clean guy, and he was involved in some bad business and bad decisions. And the moment that he turns up dead, the police starts investigating, so we have another point of view, also third person, which is Donna de Freitas, who is a police constable, so a PC. I don't know, it's just really fun so far. It is what people call a cozy murder, as in there hasn't been a lot of bloodshed or anything like that. You don't have any particularly horrific moments or scary moments or thrilling, as in like scary thriller moments, but it's just fun and lighthearted and just enjoyable to read. The writing style is so cool. I'm really loving it, and I love all the moments with the old people in the book because they're just great. Like I think Richard Osman does a fantastic job at writing the way I imagine older people to be, elderly people to be, in trying to solve a freaking murder case. So yeah. So, I'm sorry I'm gonna be a little bit quiet, but I'm at my parents' house in Brussels. I arrived here on Thursday and it's now Saturday, and so I've not had a lot of time to read through the Thursday Murder Club, but I have now just finished it tonight. So yeah, finally done with the book. Really enjoyed it. I thought I would do my usual little conclusion on the book before I leave you guys. I ended up giving it 4 stars, mainly because although I really enjoyed the book, and I have to give it to this book, there was like a proper twist towards the end, because it really felt like the author was leading me one way, and I was like, okay, so this is gonna be the bad guy, this is gonna be the murderer, and then it was so clear, like towards the last 10 pages, that it had led me the wrong way, and that had been a red herring, and had noticed that I was going down the path of a red herring. That I was suddenly like, wow, okay, well played, because I was buying it, because there was nothing I could have guessed earlier than that. And so earlier in the book I was just like, I don't know who it is, I don't know who it is. So then when finally you start thinking, okay, I think I do know who it is, and I think it's this person, it's so far down the road and so much towards the end that you think, okay, it has to be it, because if it had been a red herring, it would have been way earlier on. And then when you figure out it was a red herring, you're like, oh, well played, damn. But the reason I didn't want to give it 5 stars and only 4 is because it also just wasn't a page turner, and I've read recently a couple of books, even The Night Swim, which I think I also gave it 4 stars, for me was more of a page turner. It had other flows, but this one for me, its only flow really was that it wasn't a page turner. I didn't want to pick it up you know, every second of the day just to know what was going to happen next. I was just happy to pick it up and thought it was a really good book and was very happy to go on reading it and was like, yeah, I want to know more, but not in a way that was like, oh my god, I need to drop everything I'm doing right now and continue reading because that takes priority because this book is so good. So it was just really good, but not that good. But yeah, that's it. That's the third thriller that I have read for the month of October, and that was kind of the point, A, because October, and B, because I'm reading 3 of this or that, so each genre each time, and this time was thrillers. So yeah, it was just an interesting experiment just in terms of reading 3 in a row, completely different by completely different authors and just very unique stories. So I guess I will talk to you guys later, and I will probably see you very soon for another video. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a like, consider subscribing, clicking the bell for notifications, all that jazz. I will see you guys later.